Our next speaker will present a topic rarely spoken about, especially to a layman audience. More often than not, the subject is presented to a medical or nutrition audience. Although abstract in nature, it is the intention of Gail to deliver the topic in a manner that will help the listener to understand and even visualize the main points. Board certified as a human resource professional specializing in wellness and nutrition, she is presenting from the advanced manual, Speaking to Inform on the Human App. Welcome, DTM Gail Hill-Smith.
The music. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Tonight I want to help you to decide if your human app, or as it's more commonly referred to, your human appendix, is needed. I will highlight some history, its function, and symptoms of when to seek medical help. In 1871, Charles Darwin had identified some dozen anatomical components that he felt were absolutely useless. Then about 20 years later, about 1891, an anatomist, Robert Wiedersheim, built a list of some 90 parts of what he called vestigial organs, or as they define vestigial organs, parts of body that serve no purpose because evolution seems to deem them useless. Yes, the appendix was on Wiedersheim's list, but also were listed other vestigial parts, third molars, your tonsils, and believe it or not, tailbones. But arguments have continued even today as to the purpose, as to the function, or the evolution of our appendix. Some say that the appendix is really left over from ancestral man when they lived on a plant-based diet. The appendix in the human served as a digestive component to help digest the plants and, yes, tree bark of early man. Unlike the appendix in other vertebrates, much larger, and definitely does serve a function because other vertebrates do have and chew a lot of cellulose plant material. It is attached to our intestines, and it's a small tubular shape. And they say that about 6 to 7% of our population loses the appendix every year through an operation. Well, on March 18th, I too became part of that 6 and 7% population when I had my appendix removed. I just mentioned to you a little bit ago that scientists think that our appendix was needed in digesting leaves and bark and cellulose materials, part of the digestive system. Well, others think that the appendix actually functions more in the immune system because they find that the appendix actually produces white blood cells as well as antibodies, because inside the lining of the appendix it actually produces antibodies, which they think attributes to helping ward off disease and bacteria. So, is it part of the digestive system? Is it part of the immune system? To truly test the functionality of an appendix, you would have to conduct a lot of research in more of an underdeveloped society where there is little medicine and they eat a very plant-based diet, and where diseases such as dysentery are still prevalent. That is not the situation in our country and in developed countries. We can exist without an appendix because of modern science and the medicines that to go with it. So when do you see a doctor, you might be asking? When the appendix becomes inflamed, when it becomes filled with bacteria, and the symptoms usually occur between a 4 to a 48-hour period. Symptoms such as small pain that starts in the center of your abdomen near your umbilicus or your belly button, and then distension, nausea, pain that eventually moves its way to the lower right side of the abdomen. That's basically what happened to me. It occurred in about a 21-hour period. I had just eaten lunch when all of a sudden my stomach just distended. I thought immediately as a nutritionist, ooh, food poisoning. Then when that didn't go away, the pain, and I thought, wow, maybe I'm constipated. And by the next morning, when I literally very carefully and gingerly rolled out of bed, by the time I walked into my kitchen, I almost fainted because I felt a menopausal hot flash had just taken over my body, and I nearly collapsed. So I lay down, cooled off, got my composure, and the pain was intense down here in this lower quadrant. So you men out there, you're not going to experience menopausal hot flashes. And I thought that this intense pain that was occurring down here was related to my ovary. So you men probably would have called the ER or your doctor right away. I called my OB/GYN. Logical, yes? I went in, she took me right in, she did an exam, and she pressed and she poked and she shoved, and she says, Gail, no, I think this is related to the appendix. And very softly and succinctly, she asked me to take myself over to the hospital's ER, ask for a CT, and get diagnosed because she thought it was the appendix. By 12 o'clock, I have been wheeled down to the radiology department, and I'm sitting there when a nurse comes in with more papers to read and to sign and to indicate my emergency contact. And she said, your doctor, your surgeon will be in minutes to tell you about the surgery he's going to be performing on your appendix. It took me, of course, by complete surprise, and the nutritionist in me wanted to know, what was I eating wrong? What could I be doing differently to have warded off this inflamed apparatus? So I asked probably 4 nurses. I had 6 doctors coming in and out, and I asked everyone, what in the world would have caused inflamed this appendix? Well, just like Darwin in 1871 and Wienerschein in 1891, there was a mixed opinion. They didn't know. So now I ask you, do you need your appendix? Well, it's not going to be up to you. Your body is going to determine whether you need it or not, whether infection or bacteria sets up, or if it's just going to evolve and dissipate and self-absorb up into the intestines. Be healthy, eat those vegetables, and may your appendix live on.